Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Well, it is Tuesday morning. I'm joining you from up at the birds. I've just come up to let them out. We have had so much rain over the last few days. It's been quite astonishing. We had storms all over the weekend here in the UK, and then they kind of carried on into yesterday. Really high winds and the sort of annoying wind, like super gusty wind. So suddenly you'll be doing something and then you'll just get blasted sideways and fall over. And it's been really miserable for the chicken. Well, not just for us, but it's been miserable for the chickens. So they've got space under cover that they can hang out in, but they just sort of stand around looking miserable. And I keep saying to them, it'll soon be spring, but it's kind of hard to imagine that right now. So let me let everybody out. I'll say good morning, everybody. Morning, everybody. Hello, guys. Whoa, careful. Oh, my goodness, careful. Wow, come on, little ones. There we go. Come on, Goose. There we go. So everybody's got hot scrambled eggs again for breakfast. And actually, my dog had warm scrambled eggs for breakfast before we even left home. So everybody's set up for the day, except me. Oh, hello, Molly, sweetheart. Come here. Oh, there you go. Go and get breakfast quick before everyone else eats it. I think I've said this before. They're literally the highlight of my day, these guys. Everybody is so happy and excited. The ducks more so than anybody else. They literally treat every day as if it's their first and as if they've never seen anything else in their lives before. The excitement is just so heart affirming, it makes me feel like, yes, there is good stuff in the world. And the chickens come out and they're pretty excited. They're mostly food motivated, the chickens, so once they've eaten, they're off. That's it. So it's incredibly muddy up here at the plot. I'm not even walking on anything. Oh, hello, what are you doing in there? Have you got eggs in there? Can we have them? No, you haven't. Okay. Right, will you hang out there for the day then? Good girl, sweetheart. So yeah, incredibly wet. I'm not even walking on the plot at the moment. I don't want to cause any damage to anything. And just trying to collect as much water as possible in the bowsers, which we have done actually. One of them, the one up by the chickens, is already completely full. That's 1,000 litres of water in there. However, it's amazing how quickly you get through it. And what I didn't point out when I was talking about all my water bowsers the other day is that I need a lot of water for the ducks because they don't have a pond. So they have an assortment of paddling pools, little children's pools, and troughs and tubs and containers. That's absolutely fine for them. They don't need a designated pond. But what it does mean is that you're constantly refilling water containers for them because they have to have fresh water every day. And it's absolutely imperative that they have water so they can keep their nasal passages moist. And they don't half like making a mess. So within 5 minutes, the waters are filthy. It's sprayed all over the place. Chaos normally. But we wouldn't be without them. Anyway, I'm not supposed to be talking about chickens and ducks. I'm supposed to be talking about cut flowers because that is what you're here for. So we'll say bye-bye to the birdies for now. Have a lovely day, and I shall be back later. Okay, welcome back. Well, it rained the whole of today, pretty much non-stop, but irritatingly, that every time I went out of the front door, it started to rain, and then I'd give up and come back inside, and it would stop, and I'd go out again, and then it would rain, and I'd come in, and it would stop. We kind of played that kind of tag game all day. And I thought, no, enough is enough. I'm just going to stay indoors and do some work. So in episode 5, I talked about the annuals that I did in my trial beds in 2024 and how I got on with them. And I did make mention of a couple of perennials up there. So I thought I'd talk about the perennials that I grew last year and give you a bit of a rundown. And before I actually wrote everything down, I thought to myself, oh, I've only got a couple up there. So their contribution probably wasn't quite high last year. And now I've actually written everything down, I've realised that I've actually got quite a lot up there. So one of the reasons that we love perennials, everybody loves perennials, gardeners, clients, cut flower growers, is that they are super, super low maintenance. So when you compare what you have to do to a perennial versus what you have to do with an annual, I mean, there's no comparison really. The perennials, you just put them in the ground or you sow them from seed and they just do their own thing. There's virtually nothing that you have to do to them. They will die back over the winter here and then they'll come back in the spring. And the only thing really that you'd need to do is cut back any foliage at the end of the year, although some people leave it on for the birds or for insects or whatever. And as long as the plant isn't blowing around and you've got any kind of windrock, then fine, no problem with that. You do need to label them obviously in the winter, because if they die back completely to the crown, you don't want to be walking over them, for example. And they have these lovely non-woody stems. They, generally speaking, don't need supporting unless obviously they're really tall ones, in which case, yes, they're going to need some help. And they can be really, really good value. But having said that, the ones that you'll buy in the shops are very expensive. The prices have gone through the roof over the last, well, I don't know, 5 years, since Brexit, since COVID. We've got all these import-export issues in the UK now. And when I go around the garden centres just picking up bits, I'm absolutely horrified at the prices. You know, £12 for a perennial. You think this is madness. How has this happened? So the best way to do it, if you can, is to sow them from seed, is to buy them as tiny, tiny little plugs from online suppliers. I mean, there are some famous ones, you know, J. Parker's, Thompson and Morgan, Sutton's, that kind of thing. They can work out very, very good value. They are very, very small. If you buy like literally the plugs, when you come in the post, you'll get what looks like a little tiny parcel that just has maybe a book in it, and you'll open it and there'll be like 50 plugs, and each plant will be no bigger than the size of your little fingernail. And you'll panic and think, oh my God, these are never going to turn into anything. Well, believe me, I've got some beautiful, beautiful, really good sized plants that are very healthy and productive from these tiny, tiny plugs. So they are a very, very cost effective way of doing it, assuming you don't want to try growing them from seed, and some of them are easier than others. You could buy full size ones if you want, and I have done that. Sometimes I do that on occasion. I try and get them in the sales or get them from the wholesalers. Now, there is a suggestion out there that when you have a cut flower plot, you use 65% of the land for perennials and the rest for annuals, bulbs. And I think it's probably a good idea, because it's, as I say, so much less maintenance and work to look after perennials. But the downside, of course, is the cost, and being able to purchase all of these plants, you know, for year one. So the cost impediment is why I don't have, you know, an acre full of perennials. So I'm just sowing as many as I can each year, making the space for them. And in a few years, they will be there making up more of the bulk of the plot, rather than battling through sowing masses of seed every year, which, although I love it and I will always do it, in the volumes required and compared to the ease of using perennials, I can see why you would have more perennials than annuals. So I made my list of what I've got up there and where it's from. And I was very surprised, actually, that I had so much. So I should point out that I don't have massive volumes of each of these items I'm going to talk about. I've probably got a maximum of half a dozen for most of them, apart from the Verbena bonariensis, which you will be sick of me saying by now. I've got masses of that. So I have got everything on the right seems to be starting with the letter E. So I've got Echinacea, Eryngium, and Echinops. Now the Echinacea I bought from a neighbour of mine last year who sows seed and does some beautiful plants. I've got about half a dozen of those. The Eryngium came from plugs online, and they did very well this year. Well, 2024 was actually their first year of flowering, and they were very small, so they're not like the ones that I have in my actual garden at home. These ones up at the plot were very, very tiny, but very beautiful, and I've dried some of them, and I've got them inside in arrangements. And the third one, beginning with E, is obviously Echinops, which I just love, and that's from seed that I've got at home because I've got the big plants at home. And next to them, I've got some Agapanthus. Now, these actually came out of a client's garden many years ago. I was looking after this beautiful garden, and the client sadly moved into a care home. And I carried on looking after the garden for a while, and then he passed away. And he was a lovely gentleman, and I loved his garden so much. Anyway, after that, some new people moved in, and I didn't hear anything for ages. And then they contacted me and said, can you come and do some gardening for us? To which I said, yes, of course. And when I turned up, they said, we want you to take everything out because we want to completely redo the garden. And my first comment was, are you absolutely sure? I said, because we've got some lovely plants in here, and they bought the house in winter, so they weren't seeing the garden at its best. They couldn't really see anything. And I kept saying, are you sure? Are you sure? Because we've got this and we've got that and we've got the other. And they said, no, we've got all these plans. Take everything out. So I literally got to clear the garden out. I brought quite a lot of it home, and then what wouldn't fit in here has gone to the plot. So I do have these beautiful Agapanthus, and I didn't sell any of those last year. I just kept them because they're just so gorgeous. Okay, so I've also got some teasels, which are up there by accident. I planted the little seedlings out because they just were growing at home. I've got a couple of Leucanthemum superbum, which is also known as the Shasta daisy, and they have self-seeded. So if you have this plant at home, you'll know this. They self-seed all over the place. You turn your back for 2 minutes and there'll be another clump of them. So they're quite incredible. It might be a mistake putting them up on the plot, actually, because you do have to watch them. I've got half a dozen Achillea, which are kind of a mixed pinky red colour. They did very well this year, and they were from plugs that I bought online quite a few years ago, actually. And they were kind of sitting around in trays. And I thought, I really must do something with you guys. Put them in the soil up at the plot, and they've just taken off. And now they're really nice, nicely shaped, nice sized little plants. Lots of lovely cut flower stems from them last year. I have some Rudbeckia hirta, which I sowed last year. So they flowered right at the very end of the season. I think it was November, if I remember rightly. So I'm excited to see what those guys do this year. Snapdragons, they're dotted all over the place. Most of them have come from my own garden, and I've just put them up at the plot, and they are doing their own thing. I've got some that are the most gorgeous colour. They're sort of a purpley, bright, pinky orange colour. Really, really striking, very pretty. And I also have a clump of Helianthus Lemon Queen. Now that, if you listen to episode 5, was the perennial sunflower that I actually thought I'd bought from a shop. And I have just found the packet, and I did buy it, but it wasn't annual, the one I bought. So the Helianthus Lemon Queen is a perennial variety. So completely dies back in the winter, comes back up in the spring, and it's just got these really delicate buttery yellow flowers, multi-headed, Really, really nice and decent enough foliage, not yucky foliage. And next to that, I've got a couple of heleniums, and they came out of the same garden as the agapanthus. The ducks actually ate one of those last year. So everybody, all of those now has a kind of protective bucket around them to stop the ducks eating them. New things for 2025. I've got a couple of pots of peonies, which I bought from my neighbour, the one who did the echinaceas. And these are quite young plants, small, but I'm very excited about them. So we'll see what they do in 2025. I've got quite a few peonies in my garden. I think I've got half a dozen, and they are my actual all-time favourite flower, together with roses. And they don't do brilliantly in my garden because it's not quite sunny enough for them, and it's quite damp here as well. But I haven't got the heart to move them up to the plot. I'm desperate to hang on to them, so we'll give them one more year and see what happens. Now, I also have a stash of things at home that need to go up to the plot. And these are things that I've bought during the course of the year, mostly in the autumn time. And I'm just waiting until the ground warms up a little bit and it stops raining and dries out a bit, and I can get up there and plant them. So I have a couple of Astrantia Roma. I love these little plants. The flowers, they're very, very small, but oh my goodness, they're so pretty and so detailed. So if you ever get hold of an Astrantia, you can just, well, I can look at it for ages because there's just so much going on in there. I've got a hydrangea to go up. Bought that in the sale at my wholesalers. Not strictly a perennial because it's a woody shrub, but it's in the list. I've got the most stunning Japanese anemone to go up. It might be Queen Charlotte. I can't remember. And it was too wet to go outside and have a look at the label today. But that has these very pale double pink flowers. And oh, it was just gorgeous when I saw it. I thought I have to have that. I've got an Agastaki black adder, which is also known as the giant hyssop. And that is a very attractive plant. Got that in the sale at the wholesalers this year. The bees absolutely loved it, and I didn't get around to putting it in the ground. So that is going in the spring. I've also got some phlox, which is a bit too big for my garden, and I think will do nicely as a cut flower. And finally, I've got some Monarda. Now, I love Monarda. Mine came from Great Dixter a couple of years ago. Bought them as tiny little 9cm pot plants. And they're quite invasive. I've got a few clumps now because they really do spread around, and that's fine. I keep half an eye on them. I know what they're up to. I'm watching them. Otherwise, I think they'd be all over the place. But I don't really mind because when the flowers come out, they are just the most beautiful colour. Stems are really nice and tall, and they're like little fireworks. They're just, I just absolutely think they're fantastic. Okay, so that is what I've got up at the plot, or what's in the garden waiting to go up. Sounds like quite a lot, but I do need to make sure that I carry on sowing more perennials this year so that I'm ready for subsequent years. You really need to be sowing perennials every year. And I'm thinking about whether to buy some more little plugs from an online company. But then I'm thinking, well, there's a cost implication for that and also a space implication because I'm still going to be growing an awful lot of annuals this year. So I'm not sure about that. But that gives you an idea what I've got going in my plot. And most of those items do really, really well as cut flowers. So that's all for today. Let's hope, please cross our fingers, that things dry out a little bit. We get a break from the rain because I've got work to do the rest of this week outside. Okay, see you later. All right, so before I go, I have a couple of questions from listeners. The first one, can I change my goals? So this is based on episode 4. Well, you can't change your goals. You need to write them down somewhere, and that is that. But what you can do is revise them as the season goes on. But it's important that you don't change your original ones. Question 2 from a listener. If I could pick only 3 annuals, which ones would I grow? Well, it's a very good question, and it's a tough question, actually. Based on what I did in my trial beds in 2024, I would go with the following. Amaranthus, because they were just such good doers. They were absolutely effortless and just made masses of flowers. Number 2 would be zinnias, because once I'd got the handle on how to disbud them and treat them properly, they were absolute crackers and just so beautiful, apart from the horrible bright yellow ones. The rest of them were gorgeous. And the final one would be, I think it would be the cornflowers, actually. They were also incredibly good doers, masses and masses and masses of flowers. They produced incredibly well. I didn't space them out enormously, and they were brilliant. The only problem was that the staking kind of went a bit wonky, and the first lot were all fine, and then as the season went on, they got a little bit crowded. But the stems were perfect, and the flower heads were perfect. So that is all that matters. And a final question was a very random one, which said, why don't you ever say goodbye at the end of every episode? And that is an excellent question. And my answer is that I hate goodbyes. So you will be very unlikely to hear me actually saying goodbye, because I just hate saying it and I hate doing it. So that's why I often sign off with see you later or until next time, because it avoids saying goodbye. So on that note, I'll see you next time. Well, that's it for today. Please join me next time and do subscribe so I know you're listening. My contact details are in the show notes, and I'd love to hear from you if you have a question you'd like me to answer on the show. Until next time.